Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of Area 312 Rock and Metal Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Kent, along with my co-host.
Rex.
Friends, before introducing our very special guest today, would like to welcome back some dear friends of ours from Heaven's Metal Online magazine, Mr. Keven Crothers. Hey, Keven.
Good afternoon.
And also Jeff McCormack. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, glad to be back.
Yes, sir. Friends, regarding our very special guests, they've released a variety of rock and metal albums collectively and with other artists. Their bands and projects reflect songcraft of the highest caliber and skill meted out with precision. Visual Cliff, Fall of Echoes, Orphan Project, EchoVerse, Shockwire Saints. These are just a few avenues that these artists have traveled collectively and individually, and it's our honor today to welcome Rob Perez and Shane Lankford. Welcome, Rob and Shane. It's an honor to have you.
Hey, guys.
Great to be here.
Thanks.
Thank you all for being here. And guys, just whether vocally, Shane, or whether with the guitar, Rob, just kind of starting out at square one. I first heard this album. This was my first introduction to both of you guys. I got the feels, and I don't know exactly what that means other than that's when I say, hey, the song was sacred, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I have this song. I have to have this album. Shane, your vocals are wonderful. Rob, your instrumentation is great. Would just like to ask, whether vocally or instrumentally, who were some of your musical influences?
Rob, you want to go first? Oh, me? Okay.
I defer to you. Good.
All right. So Daryl Hall,
Yep.
Back in the 70s when I was a young kid, I was born in 71, right? So Daryl Hall, I would say Greg Volz from Petra, the better of the two Petra singers in my opinion. Mylon Lefevre, he's got that soulful voice that he can hit a lot of. His range is really good. So kind of a mixture of all those guys. I grew up always wanting to sing and had a parental influence. You'll never be a singer. So it pushed me harder. And that was kind of, the launching pad for me singing, those three guys really.
Well, you launched wonderfully.
Hey, thanks. Thanks a lot.
Rob, what about you?
Yeah, it all started out with basically seeing a commercial for the Kiss show that was coming through Pittsburgh when I was about 10 or 11. And when they cut to the part of the commercial where Ace Frehley's guitar was starting to smoke and do all that kind of cool stuff, I just ran to my parents and said, yeah, I need a guitar. I want to be that guy. So that's where I got to give, like I said in my other interview with John, I got to give props to Ace for getting me started. And then obviously a couple of years of, lessons and things like that. And my ear just took off for being able to hear something and know how to play it, kind of a thing. Then, high school hits and, it's all the typical, Jimmy Page, Rush, Jeff Beck. I mean, all those guys from your early mid 70s, Alex Lifeson. Yes. I mean, all the classic prog guys and everybody was kind of hot coming up through high school. I had my, Eddie Van Halen era, had Warren DeMartini era, and all those things, and slowly transitioned back more into the Jeff Beck motif and Al Di Meola, and so it just kind of took off from there. And actually Peter Frampton as well. Peter Frampton, a lot of guys laugh at me from a guitar playing standpoint, but I think that dude lays down some of the most beautiful phrasing and melodic soloing that just touches the heart. So he was also another big influence for me too.
Sure. Nothing wrong with Peter Frampton at all. So, well, guys, you guys are not only bringing great music, you're also bringing the greatest message in your songcraft, and I appreciate that. I would like to ask then, because along with this music, this great message is here. And so when did your respective relationship with Christ begin?
You go first this time, Rob.
Okay. About 10, 11 years old. Home alone, parents and brothers are out roaming around doing something, and I'm just channel surfing, and I come across Billy Graham's, thing on TV, and I watched through that, and I just got captivated by it. I mean, I grew up in the church, and was always a part of, our local church, and in that respect. My parents were always kind of cool about answering questions, but not like being, forceful about anything with that. They wanted me to kind of discover things just as I was ready and able to experience it. And that TV show, I was just dialed in. And when the end of the show came and he did the altar call, and, the typical thing that, Billy Graham did at each one of the end of his sermons, I mean, I was just dropped to my knees right in the living room and accepted Christ. And then when my parents came home, I told them what happened and said, I want to get baptized. And then, just went on from there.
Shane?
Well, mine's kind of I guess more of definitely odder story than that. At 5 years old, I remember one of the few memories that I have of, 5 years or younger. I remember hearing the message about Christ on the cross, sort of your ticket out of hell story, in Sunday school. So I went home and I prayed the prayer, but at a young age, and I would guess starting then, my family life wasn't great, even though my parents brought me to church. And if you've listened to Orphan Found, you'll notice and probably read the credits, or something's in there with that mentions my traumatic childhood, and that whole album is a concept on that. But the first half was really living a life with a calling beyond your family, and not being satisfied with the family that you've been placed in, so to speak, probably because of the trauma that I've gone through, and really understanding and knowing that the Lord was my father, physically and spiritually, at a young age, just being able to carry that through. And that has just that relationship has gotten deeper and better over the years. Not to say I haven't had my valleys, for sure, but he's always pulled me through, so.
Gotcha. So, gentlemen, let me ask then, Rob, I understand that Visual Cliff, it formed in the late 90s. Earlier albums include Lyrics for the Living and Key to Eternity. And then you were prompted, I guess, to search for a lyricist for the Visual Cliff material. And then I believe like the year prior, you all had formed Fall of Echoes. And so I'm wondering how was it, Rob, that you and Shane, and maybe this question's for Shane, how did the two of you discover one another and do Fall of Echoes, and then Visual Cliff was already there. So what prompted a change with the name for Fall of Echoes, and then coming into the Visual Cliff motif?
I should probably take that one, Shane.
Yeah, go ahead. You can do your thing. I think I know what you're going to say.
So, yeah, you got something a little bit backwards. Fall of Echoes happened after the Freedom Within album.
That's right.
Fall of Echoes was 2006, Freedom Within 2005. So the first two VC albums, all instrumental, and then wanted to introduce some vocals. And I went on a search for a singer locally, and I couldn't find anybody that had a mindset for God. It just wasn't happening. So I went online and just started going through every review site, everything that I could find on talking about Christian bands and whatnot, to just see if I come across a voice that maybe I can reach out to and just have them guest on some stuff. And finally came across Orphan Project, Orphan Found. There you go.
There it is.
I was completely blown away, obviously, by Shane's voice and the whole nine there. And I'm like, for what I'm writing, I'm like, that's the voice. So I reached out to them through their site, through their contact information. I think I went straight to you, Shane.
Yeah,
And
I think so. Straight email. Yeah.
and just conned him into singing on our stuff. And the rest is history. And Sacred is the very first song that I wrote, thinking that I wanted a vocalist on it. And I'll never forget. My wife will never forget. And I think you guys still have the voicemail somewhere that I left you. Where I'm literally weeping on this voicemail back to him and Tony Corelli after hearing what came back. Because my wife looked at me and was like, that's called lightning in a bottle. Mm-hmm. And to this day, brothers, God, all the glory to God. When I go to the portal and CD Baby and look at like what's being played on Spotify and all the other things, that song is how old now? And out of all of my material, Sacred is #1 in downloads and streams every single month. And it has been that way since it was released. So that's kind of how that happened. And then Fall of Echoes, the following year, we kind of had an idea where I wanted to kind of just get away from anything instrumental and just do just 100% vocal album to showcase Shane and everything that he writes. And we decided, well, why not have like me and Rick from Visual Cliff, and then Shane and Bill Yost from Orphan Project, and do some kind of little morphing fun there with that. And that's how Fall of Echoes came about. And Tony Corelli was kind of like the ghost, not named keyboard player, in that project too.
Has there been any more consideration been given to any more Fall of Echoes material?
No, we kind of thought we would do something else, and we thought maybe we would kind of take something on the road a little bit with it, but it just never materialized.
Yeah.
So I think God just wanted to leave it as a beautiful one-off.
Well, it's great stuff. And let me ask y'all, Shane, let me ask you this. Prior to your joining Visual Cliff, you were in Orphan Project. And I am actually relatively new to your all's material. It was Keven who introduced me to the Visual Cliff stuff and the Orphan Project material. And so I have Spooning Out the Sea on its way to me. It's
nice.
It's on it's ordered with a pre-order, so I'm waiting.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
It's coming my way. Shane, prior to your joining Visual Cliff, you were in Orphan Project, and guys, we're gonna kind of mix and match here a little bit. So, Shane, tell me about Orphan Project and the formation of Orphan Project. What was the catalyst for that band forming, and why the name?
Wow. Okay, so I'll try to make this as short and sweet as I can. The release happened in late 02, early 03, I think. But the writing of it occurred, I'm going to say, maybe after, I guess, late 01, mid 01. Just got done through a horrendous, gut-wrenching conviction situation with me and my marriage. And my wife showed me Christ ridiculously in this situation. And I would say a time of repentance and just laying low and kind of recalibrating myself spiritually and getting back in the Word. And, a lot of these things that maybe a lot of my decisions that I made that led to what occurred, no excuses, but there's a lot of pent up trauma, a lot of stuff, a lot of anger, a lot of decisions that I made just for relief's sake, so to speak. Went through that, confronted by my wife about that. And so there was a period of time where I really didn't do much, but music was always there. And the Lord, obviously in his word was just teaching me things. And I remember going to Barnes and Noble's one night and taking a notebook with me because I thought I needed to get out my life story in verse. I don't know why. I just figured if I was ever going to do music, it would have to be my story first, I think, and how the Lord impacted me and changed me. And now I'm a part of his family. So I remember going to Barnes and Noble. I remember back in the day when there were bookstores. I think they're still all together, a couple places. But I sat in the cafe and I literally wrote not every song in its completed form, but pretty close, within like 45 minutes to an hour. And I sat down and it just all came out. And I remember going home and I remember showing Wendy. I was like, look at this. This has got to be, something's got to be done with this. Who could I call to do the absolute best musical job with it? And write melodies to it. That would be a motive, using all of our favorite, I guess you would say, rock heroes and bands, Kansas, Peter Gabriel, Pink Floyd. I was a huge fan of Jorn back in the day when he, with Ark, loved Ark stuff. I wish they would do Burn the Sun on vinyl. But so all those kinds of things, Trevor Rabin era, yes, all that stuff together. And I called my buddy John Wenger, and he was like a Peabody grad. He's one of these like geniuses. This dude could easily be making millions of dollars a year if he just got over the fact that when you sing live, you're going to make mistakes. And he did not, he hated imperfection in anything he did. And that also cost me in the studio, where it was like a $20,000 project, Orphan Found, when it was all said and done. But it was worth it. So anyway, so I call him up, for a while. I give him the lyrics. He comes back every 2-3 weeks. I'm paying him as he's writing music to this stuff, using those influences. And they're all his favorite influences too. So it wasn't hard for him to come up with the stuff. But over a period of time, eventually we got enough material to where we're like, all right, let's get in the studio. We think we have 10 to 12 songs.
Why do I feel that this isn't real? But it's so hard just to try and not feel to all of the feelings I feel every time I go straight through the door. Bartender, one more, and I'll be stumbling down to the floor. Why won't someone just reach out their hand to me?
So I knew a guy named John Grant who owned Secret Sound Studio. We go there, and he does a lot of like jazz fusion stuff that comes into Baltimore. A lot of times we'll be doing recording for those guys anytime anybody comes through. Carl Filipiak, a couple major drummers whose names I forget now, but he'll record those guys. But his understudy, Tony Corelli, was starting a studio out of his house. And he thought we would be a great project to toss his way because he's younger. We wanted it to be, his stuff was great. John's stuff was great, but Tony had this, a good ear for, I would say, his Gothic influences and Orphan Found and Orphan Project sound were a lot of Tony's thoughts. He was a big electronica guy, industrial guy. But he also knew rock and roll, and he knew how to work with people. So came in, and it was really just me and John. John played in the beginning. John played all lead guitars. He played all keyboards, did all backing vocals. And then Tony knew, John also knew a cellist, Ben Hardesty, who he brought in to do all the live cello parts on that album. And then he also knew a violinist who played all the live violin parts. We didn't have any recorded sounds brought in on Orphan Found. Everything was natural. And so, and then we had, after going through a couple drummers, we found a friend of Tony's who came in and played, I would say, better than the original version drummer stuff that you might have. If Keven, if you don't have the cover that has the OP symbol on the bottom right corner, that's the remaster. The original one doesn't have that symbol, and you could tell by, you know, there's a little bit of out of pocket syncopation with some of the drumming and things like that. We just had to redo it. So anyway, we get the album done.
This is an original then.
Okay, yeah, you have the original.
Oh,
Try
man,
to
I
find,
got
if you can find the one with the symbol on the bottom right corner, that's it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit heavier, drives a little bit better. I think it sounds better personally.
I got to find that one.
Mine
Yeah,
is better
gotta
than
find out.
yours.
But after we were all done, and here's the thing, like the very first song I heard was Paupers Unfulfilled. I walked into Tony's studio. He's like, all right, I think we got something finished. And I mean, I did what Rob did. I fell to my knees and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm a part of anything this amazing. And every song, like, and I'm not tooting my own horn. It's really John and his amazing, his vision of how the song should sound, his perfection wanted on every note for every instrument. My voice, I mean, I worked my butt off in the studio to nail that stuff. And Tony, you know, Tony's just the most patient guy. And so if it takes 10, 15 takes, so be it. You know, I'm not a vocalist that can nail everything once. Although, you know, as I sung more, I was able to do that more and more. But once we got it done, we all kind of looked at each other and were like, this is way too good to just let sit. And then we formed a band using some of Tony's friends. Scott Spivey was the lead guitarist brought in. A guy named Colin Magoo, who John and I think Scott played with before, ended up playing bass for us, I think. And then Tony obviously took on keyboards. John was able to sit back and be rhythm guitarist and lead background vocalist. But Scott could sing. Colin Magoo could sing. So we always had at least 3-part harmony options if we wanted. And we were a 6-piece, right? So, and I remember our very first show was we opened up for Spock's Beard.
Oh, boy.
And
Oh,
it was
man.
either Keswick
No
Theater
pressure there.
What was that?
No
No
pressure,
pressure there.
Well, the crazy. So Neil had just left the band,
I was about to say he'd have been gone by then. So
right? And we got up there. I remember the positioning of us. We were kind of on bleachers that were pushed in, and the drummer was off to the side. But we all had we were all on these different levels. And my understanding from Scott Spivey's mouth, my guitar wasn't plugged in the whole show. But the crazy thing, we're done. We're hearing things like, you blew away those guys. Who are you? And I'm like, well, you got to be kidding me. With no lead guitar? That doesn't make any sense. So, you know, I knew right there we had something going. And really, obviously, the Lord gets all the glory because, you know, it's his working out of all of it anyway and finding the guys. So, and the stories came from him for sure. But that's kind of as fast as I can make that story, you know, get that whole thing together. And then from there, we just did shows and clubs and opened up for Striper twice in our history and played Cornerstone, a bunch of other stuff.
Shane, when you mentioned that you went through a couple drummers with Orphan Project, I mean, were these like exploding drummers like in Spinal Tap or?
You know, one guy was John Grant's nephew. So he immediately was like, hey, why don't you try this dude? And it was one of those things where, you know, I'm hearing stuff that I'm thinking is okay. John's hearing stuff and he's like, there's not a chance we're using this guy. And so we're like talking back and forth. We're like, we got to find, he's like, we got to find another guy. And so, and then we found, I think it was only this one guy we went through till we found Sean his name, his last name is out of my brain right now. Sean, and he comes in. He's much heavier drummer. And he was the one who was on the remaster. And then he ended up leaving, and then Tim Caring came in, and he was the guy we had through most of the history of Orphan Project. So,
Well, getting back to A Match Made in Heaven, which is you, Shane, and you, Rob, together. Going back to Fall of Echoes, then, I'm curious about the title Red Tree. What is the significance of that album title for Fall of Echoes?
That's you, Shane. You came up with that whole concept.
I think, well, that's a good question for me to actually dig back in and get the answer. It's one of those things where I think the lyrics of the song came before the album title. And just the whole focus on the idea of the blood of Christ on the tree, symbolically, certainly the cross, and, where everything flows from, where, if the lyrics, I can't remember them right now. My memory is horrible, guys. You're going to have to forgive me as far as trying to remember lyrics.
Well, we're dusting off some neurons today, brother.
Is it tears fall from the red tree?
Yeah,
Something.
From the red tree.
But just the whole idea of the Lord weeping for his people, and, his blood covers us. And, it all stemmed from the red tree.
What about the band name, the project name, Fall of Echoes? What is that signifying?
I think I came up with that. That was
I think you did. Yeah,
just like scripture, the lessons of scripture. Falling into an echo space where people aren't listening to it and are paying attention to it anymore. There's just such a fall of that echoing anymore. It's not prevalent. Was kind of more the mental thing behind that name.
It's funny when I hear the name, and I think even back then when I heard the name, my thoughts were it was echoing through creation, the whole idea of his message continually echoing through creation. We're a part of doing that. Yeah, so both, it's like a flip side.
I love how people can come up with either way to think meaning, of that.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, so as I mentioned earlier, Keven had introduced me through a series of, sometimes Keven, he'll drop, hey guys, if you don't know about this group, really check them out and see what you think. And Keven had introduced me to Visual Cliff and Fall of Echoes and Orphan Project. And I'm, so here I am, and eager to learn more. Now, if I'm not mistaken, and I was dismayed, I think I read about 2018's Refuge album as being Visual Cliff's last. I don't know if there is to be any more from Visual Cliff. I could only hope that maybe the future might allow that to happen. But proceeds for that album go to Loving the Lost Boys Ministry. Shane, this is you and your wife's ministry. Is that correct? And can you shed some light on that?
Yes, it is not still going, but from, I guess, 2014 to about 2021 or so, we have a heart for adoption and orphans. And I never answered the Orphan Project name question you asked me anyway, but I was adopted. I adopted both my kids, one with Down syndrome, the other one just super awesome dude. Both guys are amazing, but and Knox was from Albania. He was conceived in Albania. His parents flew over to the States to have him adopted. His dad actually wanted him aborted, but his mom fought for him to be born. And so he agreed to fly over here to have him put up for adoption. And, when I got the call, hey, we think we have a son for you with Down syndrome and heart defects, I was over the moon. I was just like, Lord, you're giving me a son, and the other things you'll take care of. And so we have our international special needs foster kid all wrapped in one in Knox. we have your normal adoption in gray, and my story was the adoption with tons of trauma once you're brought into the family. We went to the Christian Alliance for Orphans Summit. There's a group, a global group called the Christian Alliance for Orphans that meets somewhere in a mega church in America once a year, and there's a summit, lasts 2 or 3 days, and you hear all the new frontline methods of caring for orphans and foster children globally and locally. And we heard about the demographic of the aged out foster youth. And the statistics are staggering where, 80% of aged out boys end up being in prison, drugs, trafficking, anything, gang families, and females, 60% of them end up getting trafficked because legally you're not allowed to contact your social service person or your caseworker who's been with you your whole time through your foster life once you age out. The day you age out, you're cut off. And so now you only have your peers. And 9 times out of 10, your peers are going to be people just like you. There's a reason family's not around, or you're not involved in family or kinship care or anybody. You're on your own. So I was impressed upon us when we heard this girl talk about when she got married. She was aged out, and her church ended up standing. The whole church stood for her when the pastor asked, "Who gives this girl to this man?" And I was blown away when I heard that. And I looked at Wendy. I was like, maybe we could have something to do with these guys in the future. And so we prayed about it. And then all of a sudden, maybe a year later, I think I have the flu. My wife's away teaching or speaking at a Christian homeschool workshop. And I get this call from this girl who Wendy and I taught in youth group. So this would have been maybe 20 years ago or so. She calls up. She's like, "Hey, I ran into so-and-so who said you're doing some kind of orphan care work, wondering if you could help me." Some guy called me out of the blue who was my neighbor. He's going to age out in 2 weeks. He's terrified. He's out in Western Maryland. They're more like in Central Maryland in Frederick, and we're over, we're further over in Harford County, closer to the East Coast than them. And, the conversation was just like, "Hey, can you have him live with you guys?" And my first thought was like, "Well, can he live with you? And I'll find you transitional housing while he's with you guys." And she was like, "Well, my husband doesn't want him because we have 2 young kids." Right here's, I got 2 young kids, and I'm thinking, okay, well, whatever. All right, so can you get him to my house? If you can get him to my house by next Saturday, I'll start working on a transitional home for him. And he ended up coming. I told Wendy, and she was just like, "No way. I'm done. I'm taking a break." We just got done caring for a homeless couple for about 1.5 years, and we walked with them from homelessness to actually owning a house and having jobs and stuff. But she was super tired. And I'm just this, when you're adopted, you either go one of 2 ways. You crawl into a shell with most situations that come up, or you're like, you're going to save the world in the situation. There's usually no in between. And so I've always had that, let's jump off the cliff mentality. The Lord's going to hold me. And I guess if spiritual gifts are ever brought up, faith for sure would be mine. But I said, look, I'll take care of them. I'll see what's up. I'll interview him downstairs. I'll make sure he's safe to be at our house if that's the case, and we'll just go from there. All you need to do is be around to feed us. And she's like, "All right, I'll just stay in the kitchen and blah, 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 whatever." So I take him out. We have Chinese. I get him a haircut. I can't remember what I did with his phone, but then I took him downstairs and we had about a 2-hour conversation. And I felt like he was safe to sleep in our basement while I tried to find transitional housing for him. And it took about a week. But during that time, this guy eats, twice as much as Gray, who was a pretty big boy, but at this time he was, 10 or 11 years old. And started realizing that if we're going to provide some things for these guys beyond just staying at our house for a week and getting them into transitional housing, we want to form a nonprofit that allows people to give. Because the idea was like, once we housed this guy, and it ended up where I had transitional housing set up 8 days later. The day I was taking him to the housing, he said, "Hey, I really want to live with you guys." And I was like, okay. So I said, well, Wendy and I figured that question might come up. So we already talked about it, and we said it would be okay as long as there were parameters set. We would have weekly check-ins on things. He had a major drug vice. Weed really was the thing, and alcohol. And so, we understand you're not going to be able to cold turkey these things. You just can't do them on our property. We figured we'd make it hard for him to do this stuff, while we just share family life and Christian life with him, bring him to church and things like that. And we found out we needed more, definitely more prayer in our life from others caring for these guys, because we figured we could probably house more than one at a time. And then financially, things were more expensive than what we were used to. And so the finances in my job, Wendy was a stay-at-home homeschool teacher for our boys. And yeah.
In this marketplace where ideas compete, everyone's a leader, hurling rocks out in the street. Eyes fixed on our goals, we miss the ones we hurt, and never see the casualties of zeal that's gone berserk.
We started a 501c3 called Loving the Lost Boys. My wife's name's Wendy, and obviously Peter Pan. You got the Lost Boys and all that. She put all that together. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
And then when she showed me, I was like, oh my goodness, that makes total sense. So Loving the Lost Boys started around 2014, 2015. And, so we just, whoever wanted to give funds. And what we found a lot in churches, whenever we brought them to church, at least for the church we were at then, we ended up moving pretty soon. People would love this guy with a 10-foot pole in between them. And, they'd be totally cool with writing us checks, but nobody wanted to offer respite hours. Nobody wanted to really dive in relationally with these guys. And so we were just like, all right, we're just going to keep going and see how this goes, So, and then Rob was kind enough to, which I didn't know when Refuge came out till he told me, proceeds are going to be given towards Loving Lost Boys, which was great, well received and good. Thank you.
I never put two and two together with Wendy and the Lost Boys until you just said that.
It's crazy, right?
That's pretty neat. That's pretty neat.
Well, Shane, on both of these Orphan Project albums, and I'm glad you mentioned that Orphan Found has been remastered. Okay. Now I'm like, I'm on a hunt to get that because this record sounds amazing. And
Tony's a genius. That's what I will tell you.
It sounds good,
right?
But it doesn't sound as clean.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So and what I've noticed, this is a record, and I was telling Kent before we all came on, this is an album about identity.
Mm-hmm.
This is an album about grace.
Mm-hmm.
Spooning out the sea. For years, I first heard this back in like 2010. And I'm like, I don't understand. I honestly, and it was, hey, Keven, the sea is the grace of God. And we as followers of Jesus, that little spoon will never be able to spoon the sea. So was that planned that way?
The title, it was kind of twofold, and really you hit the one side, on the nose as far as we will never, ever get to the bottom of the riches of who God is and the grace that he's given us. Right. So we could be spooning out the sea forever. The other thing is the flip fold of that is, someone seeking for truth. If you're looking outside of scripture, you're going to be spooning forever too, because scripture is the only place you're going to find it, and so it's a sort of, again, another twofold message. And then the song lyrically is actually written about someone that I know who knows the truth, but continually turns to other ways of finding the truth, and I'm just like, dude, you're spinning out to sea, man. You're never going to find it until you go back to it.
Because this album sounds more metal to me than where this cello and violin, it's definitely progressive. It's hard rock with like we could say some slight metal parts, but it's more dynamics in some ways. Right. But this was the album that I came on board with.
Right.
And when I first heard this record, I had essentially I guess you'd call it a nervous breakdown. No, I'm not kidding.
Oh, for real? Okay.
I went that time of my life.
Oh.
I had a nervous breakdown and suffered clinical depression. I was out of work for over a year and a half.
Wow.
And this, to me, when I listen to this, at times I'm reminded, it feels like I'm listening to the Psalms. And Fallen, I wrote an article for Heaven's Metal here last year, 10 songs, 12 songs that were, if you go back to the Old Testament, when the Israelites crossed the Jordan River, they put monuments up as reminders of where they had been and where they'd come to. And for me, when I hear Fallen, that is one of those 12 songs that I wrote about in that article. And
God is good.
There are parts of that song that feel so autobiographical to me that it's a beautiful, beautiful song. And it's not so much I have a question, but just to say, Shane, thank you.
Hey.
Because God knows for me what that track means to me personally. And to hear the hallelujah, hallelujah in there and how everything was arranged. And, that's why I said I'm excited to go back and hear the first one that was remastered, because Spooning Out the Sea to me is the whole record is a lost gem. And I know I heard through the grapevines all the unfortunately negative stuff that happened after the record came out with the label.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
That was ridiculous, that whole thing.
And I so wish that this record would get a remaster and a reissue.
Well, I will tell you, let me just give you a sneak message that I have been, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but I'm going to tell you. I've been talking with Bill Baffert.
I don't even know this.
Bill Baffert about doing
vinyl reissue.
I really want Spooning and Orphan Found on vinyl. I'm like a huge vinyl file. And so I've been talking with him about re-releasing both of those on sort of a gatefold vinyl.
Wow.
Which obviously I think there'll be CDs redone and things like that. So I think your wish will happen, but he's got so many things going on where this would really for him be more of a back project.
Yeah.
And if things ever slow down, he might consider, but we've been talking and he's saying that he wants to do it. It's just when.
Timing.
So, but it's funny that you mentioned Fallen because to me, that song was written as an ode to how the Lord carried me through a literal fall back in '08.
Is that off the roof?
I fell 20 feet off the top of a roof onto a driveway. I broke my pelvis. I broke some backbones and some neck bones. And I ended up walking in a day and a half, which was ridiculous. And the Lord just had plans for me. And so the falling, he will carry me when I've fallen. I think of that, but I also know spiritually, it's obviously every step of every day he's carrying us,
Was it intentional to make that whole Spooning Out the Sea album a more metalized or with a more of a metallic sheen as opposed
No,
to
so John Wenger was not involved at all in spooning. And John is much more of a progressive symphonic writer. He's got more of an ear for that, although he does love metal. Where Bill and I were the main songwriters for Spooning Out the Sea. And at the time, I think, Bill was probably more of the music writer, where again, I was more of the lyricist.
Yeah.
But I came up with most of the melodies. But Fallen, I think, might have been almost all of his work musically. And then I was lyrically and melodically the melody writer for that. But he also had a big hand in the melody too. So Bill, that's why, and Bill's a big metalhead. That's his thing. 80s, Dokken, all that kind of stuff was his stuff. But I like the Gothic influence that Tony puts in. So we kind of mixed it all up, and that's where you have that.
The only thing I don't have is the EP, which I know I think was only released digitally, or was it? It was.
No, there's CDs of it out there somewhere. That has our cover of Another Brick in the Wall on it, which is a lot of people tend to like. But I love Pink Floyd, so certainly not going to say anything else.
Okay. Are there? I understand there are 4 songs. Are the other 3 songs original songs in the sense
three
are they on either album?
Spooning. 3 originals that are on Spooning.
Okay.
You have 3 of them. You just don't have the Brick in the Wall cover.
Okay. Well, that's another thing to look for.
Yeah.
So, Shane, do you have a place where fans could get the remastered CD at?
Not any place that I would go to other than look on Discogs and see who's selling what.
Okay.
That's really, there might be, what's that place? There's a place out in Utah. Greg Walker is the owner of it. It's Prague something, but this was years ago. Okay. I did all the distribution and all of that stuff. I would contact guys myself.
Okay.
I spent all my days trying to find guys to sell this record Orphan found. And so I made some relationships with those guys, but that's back in 03, 04, 05. I just don't remember any of the guys that are left. And I don't have any copies I have CDR copies of Spooning that have, the color cover and there's no pages. It's just the back cover is sort of the insert. And then the back of it again is, the back of the regular CD. But the 16-page booklet, Spooning Out the Sea, that's a rare one to find. I think if you can find that, that'd be a great one to have. And
okay.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Sorry,
I remember spending time all over Yahoo back then had a photograph, I think, sort of a file where you could go through. And I remember spending hours looking for a photograph to use for each song. And then I contacted the owner of the photographs and got the rights to use it. And that's how we put that together. But
okay.
Sorry. I wish.
That's
I
okay.
wish I had them all in my closet.
Well, the hunt is half the fun. So yeah.
Jeff, you got any?
I don't got any questions. I'm gonna, like Kevin, kind of just ooze a little bit on that. I mean, I had these albums back in the day, and I remember we used to commute to church about 40 minutes each way. And I remember listening to these all the time, and even my kids really got into them. At the time, we had just recently moved back here to my hometown, and I thought, hey, honey, you sure you don't want to move a little further north to Baltimore? We're down in Virginia Beach. And I'm like, I think I need to go up there and join this band as a drummer. So,
Nice.
it was just, they just were amazing and very, killer back in the day, just loving this stuff.
Well, thanks, guys. I mean, I will say, too, that I've been talking with John Winger and Bill. Bill is ready to jump in at any moment. John, like, we've talked about doing a third album. But I want to get John and Bill on board and kind of mesh the two worlds. I don't want to do an album with just Bill, and I don't want to do an album with just John. And I'm just waiting for John has agreed, yes, that there's a third album in him. It's just when he can pull the trigger. His family life is very, very tough. So, in God's good timing, that will happen, Lord willing.
Gotcha. Rob, I have some questions I'd love to pitch your way too, if I may, and just want to start out really quick with this great album, EchoVerse, and we had the blessing of having Kyle and KG and Doug on, and they mentioned at the time that you kind of poo-pooed us. You didn't really want to be on for the interview, so I'm teasing. I'm teasing, buddy. It's an honor to have you today, Rob, along with Shane. Rob, how did you, because you have so many different wonderful groups and projects that you're involved with, how is it that EchoVerse came together, that you and Doug and KG and Kyle found each other to form EchoVerse?
Doug was working musically with a local guy that he knew, and they wanted to do some songs, and they formed the band, and at that time it was named Asher. And Doug, obviously, in working with me on a bunch of stuff, I've guested on tons of his stuff, laying down guitar solos and whatnot. He said, hey, I'm working with this guy, I'm kind of doing everything musically with him. He's playing a little guitar, working on his songs, some of my songs. You want to play some guitar solos on it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Absolutely. All the time. You can, feel free to ask me to do that. Everything you put out's quality. And then we started to have a conversation where he was like, man, I don't want to sing on this stuff. He's like, I'm tired of my own voice. I want to find a singer. And at that same point in time, Jason Graves, KG's brother, who's been a supporter of me and Shane's work for years, he was always putting KG in front of me in his YouTube videos of like doing covers and stuff like that. It's like, hey, if you ever need a singer, throw something at my brother. He's really good. And I offered to Doug. I'm like, well, I just threw like a couple of tunes at this dude named KG. I said, I haven't heard anything back from him yet. But maybe we just kind of throw those to the side for right now, because they were kind of like whatever songs for me. That just seems like a real project that, he could probably dig into. Let's audition him on a track, and then you can not have to sing on this stuff, and we can just work with him. So we brought KG in, he auditioned, knocked our socks off, and then next thing led to him, KG having his buddy Kyle playing drums. And then it kind of just started working and morphing into that. And then Kyle, when he joined, he was like, are you guys sold on the name Asher? And I'm like, no. And he came up with EchoVerse, and we all kind of jumped on that and thought that was really cool for lots of, different meanings that you can, glean from that name and what you can do visually and whatnot. So that's kind of how all that happened.
Well, our mutual friend, John De Laurentiis, introduced me to EchoVerse. And John, I thank you again. I absolutely love EchoVerse. Rob, am I mistaken? aren't you all in either embarking upon or in the middle of or something a new EchoVerse album? That's in the works.
It's going to be hitting here probably in a couple of weeks.
Wow, I'm ready. I'm in. I'm sold. Rob, again, so many great projects and stuff, and I'd like to talk about Shockwire Saints. I've said it a million times, and I'll say it a million and one here. A good cover for me is everything, and when it represents what's within, and you know, you need a little eye candy to draw you to that ear candy. And boy, I sure do love that cover. I've listened to it online. It's on my wish list. Jamie Millard does bass work on that, and I know Jamie from Applehead, myself being an Applehead fan. Profits from the Shockwire Saints release, they benefit the Children's Hunger Fund, if I'm not mistaken. Rob, please
And
expand.
Feeding America.
Huh?
And Feeding America.
Okay, well, tell us about it.
It's always just been, a thing with me. I take very seriously the verse, what you do unto the least of these, you do unto me. And that always just resonated with me with literal sustenance food, and feeding those who are hungry, spiritually and otherwise. And so, most of my projects have always been, ways that, feed that end of that, and donate those funds to those two great charities. The Shockwire Saints album, praise God, created enough support for over 4,500 meals for folks. So, that's something that I always just sit back and marvel at God about, because I'm just some punk dude from Canonsburg, PA, and no big labels behind me, and God just kind of does his thing with what I put out, on his behalf. So yeah, Jamie's great. Jamie was in Visual Cliff on one of the albums, and worked with him on a couple of tracks in the Exit Strategy stuff, and some other, one-offs that I throw out there single-wise under the RPM moniker, Rob Perez Music. So when Shockwire Saints came aboard, as far as writing music, and I'm like, man, I want to get some different players and different things kind of cooking here. And I always knew of Mike Adams as a drummer from Vertical Alignment, and I know he's worked with some other folks that I've worked with, and I'm like, let me tap into some of Mike's drum and throw some stuff at him and see what comes back. And just the motif of where his drum kit is, I guess, in his space, and what he's got in the way of equipment to capture it. When he sent it back to me on the first track, I'm like, man, I'm getting like a vibe in my head of like a live club kind of vibe, where not so over processed, more like if you're sitting in a perfect seated position in this club, hearing a band really tight live, what would that sound like? How would that kind of come across? And that was, the genesis of how I mixed and mastered it. So it hopefully it comes across more like you're listening to it in a really good live setting. That was the goal. And Mike's drums sound kind of pushed it to that, fed that idea.
Rex and I have had discussions, Rob, about your various and sundry works, and I've noted one of the things that I mentioned to Rex about your engineering and production, everything is crystal clear. It's pristine. You're a master at that, and I don't know what your secret is, but whatever it is, I applaud you, because
I'm still figuring it out.
all the works that I have are absolutely crystal clear and pristine.
I'm still chasing that rabbit hole, brother. Because it's I appreciate that, and there's times where I'll listen back to the 2003 album or the 2004 Visual Cliff album, and I just thank God for how far I have come in it. But it's like, yeah, you're always chasing tone. We that just is always going to happen. You're never satisfied.
So, I'm sorry, Kent.
Go ahead.
I was going to say on Freedom Within, I did some reading that this got some secular distribution way back when. Is that correct?
Yeah, it ended up in Best Buy in Circuit City.
Okay. Do you remember how that all came about?
Yeah.
You walked in and put them on the shelf.
Yeah, I just kind of had my own little kiosk, and I said, I'll man it here. I'll hand out popcorn, whatever it takes.
Sneak
Sure.
'em in.
No, it came out in 2005, and then about a year later into promoting it and it kind of grabbing some legs, especially, like I said, with the song Sacred leading the way. I mean, I don't even know if it's still a thing. The Revolution channel on Sirius, is that still a Christian rock kind of channel? Is that still even around?
Probably
But
not.
Don't
the
know.
Revolution channel, I think it was on Sirius or whatever,
Okay.
was wildly popular, and I got it into those guys' hands, and they started playing it, and it started getting requested a lot on that Revolution channel,
Okay.
and that caught the attention of Chromatizo, a label, I think it was Minnesota or Michigan or somewhere up around there.
Yeah.
And Dave, the owner of Chromatizo, reached out to me and said, hey, I would love to hop on board with this and represent it. And I'm like, man, it's already been out like a year. I said, I don't want you to, lose your shirt over it or anything like that. And, he's like, oh no, he goes, I got some channels and blah, 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 blah. And then I was just like, yeah, sure. Whatever, to God's glory. I mean, if somebody wants to get behind it and do some stuff, let's roll. And then he ended up coming back to me and saying, yeah, I got it in Best Buy in Circuit City. And I was like, what? And
Nice.
so, that had some legs there for a little while. And and another crazy twist is, back in the day, like Shane was saying, reaching out to anybody and everybody to kind of get the album in hands and get it, some distribution. I was always trying to get into the Baltic states. And that was always a tough area to try to find somebody reputable to do it. And out of nowhere, a label, it's kind of funny how it, drummer bass guy in Visual Cliff, Rick Malz, well, this label was Malz, M-A-L-Z, was the name of the label. And it was a Russian label. And they bought the rights to Freedom Within to completely blast it through the Baltic states area. So, I mean, again, I just, so many stories of God just taking this thing and just being God with it, where I'm just like, I'm sitting back going like, how is this even happening?
Because I know, and I picked it up from when I was reading through the bio stuff on the website. I hadn't noticed, but this got picked, on Sea of Tranquility back in 03.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right here. Elias Granillo, top 15 CDs. Visual Cliff is like right at number 15, one of his top picks of top 15 CDs of 2003. And so I was just like, wow. I mean, I had honestly no idea, because it just, these days, Christian, well, we say Christian music, but music with a Christian or from a Christian point of view doesn't seem to get much traction in the non-Christian press. So when I read, see stuff about this, and I'm like, how did I miss that 20 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
But that's just, to me, that's just exciting,
Oh, yeah. God's just constantly at work, and it's the way he weaves the fabrics of everything as to when it touches people at the right times and all that deal. I mean, that's the fun stuff, man. That's the juice for me. To see how he works in all this.
Well, Keven, I'm sorry, Kent.
Oh,
You were talking about Sea of Tranquility, another album that I wanted to say something to Rob and Shane about. I'm not sure, Shane, if you were involved with this, but the Out of the Archives release that came out in 2013, Sea of Tranquility gave it a glowing review and loved it, and I totally agree with them. That release, I know that is unreleased stuff, I believe, but that whole collection of songs is awesome. And probably my favorite song is When Everything Else Is Gone. I really like that.
That's one of my favorites too.
So like you said,
I've
Keven.
always wanted Shane to sing on that and find.
Oh, okay,
You
yeah.
remember that, Shane?
I think so. I don't know. How did I not do that, or what went down with that?
It's just timing stuff, and I knew that was always
Yeah.
one song that I was like, man, if you were going to sing on anything that was on Out of the Archives, that would have been the one that I would have loved to have seen you could do anything with vocally. But yeah, that album, man, is a cool story too. Cast off tunes from the previous albums leading up to that didn't get used, and I had forgotten about, quite frankly. And like I said earlier, I mean, Rick and Visual Cliff is an archivist, so I mean, everything I kept throwing at him and throwing at him and throwing at him, he never discarded or deleted or anything like that. So he reaches out to me. I think it was the Christmas of 2012 or something like that. And he's like, hey, I got a present for you. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Come on over to the house anytime. He lives right down the road from me. And he stops over and he hands me, all this, material on discs that are the drums and bass for these songs for, what's on that album. And I was like, when did you do this? And he's like, I've been working on it. I haven't told you. I wanted to surprise you. He goes, I just think these songs should get out there. They shouldn't be like stuck in my archive drawer somewhere. And he goes, here you go. Merry Christmas, brother. So that's the genesis of that album. And I'm like, out of the archives, here we go. You're the archivist, Rick. So we did that album up. It was all 100% instrumental album. So yeah, I mean, Shane wasn't obviously involved in that other than the desire to maybe have him sing on that one song that we were just talking about. But yeah, that album's I dig that album a lot. No, that's probably one of my favorite instrumental albums.
I was just glad to see a website like Sea of Tranquility. I think probably everyone here kind of knows who they are, and to see them, give, I feel, an honest review and just a glowing
Yeah,
thing
those
for
guys are pretty
music.
straight up.
I really appreciate that. Another song on that album, Rob, that I really like too is Cathedral Groove. I thought that was
that one.
another good rockin' song.
That's that for an instrumental. That's probably one that's heavily either downloaded or streamed.
Oh, okay, cool.
From that album. Yeah, that was a kind of a cool surprise.
Nice.
Well, y'all, I've been around the block a time or two. Since 1982, I have, like Keven said, for lack of a better term, latched on to Christian rock and metal. Myself as a Christ follower and appreciating great music with the greatest message. And guys, like Keven was saying, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, great music that espouses the greatest message, it takes a while for it to reach out, and I'm not sure why, but I've noticed the same thing, Keven. And had it not been for Keven directing me toward you guys, and I've been around, but I would not have known. But my point in saying all that is, guys, I just now feel like Visual Cliff is getting some legs. I checked out, I'm like, okay, well, what does our friend Andrew Rockwell over at Angelic Warlord, what does he have to say? Does he know? And he's got several of your albums listed, and he's given every one of them glowing reviews. I mean, you guys are making a mark, and I just hope we, never say never. So with all that said, Rob, here I am. I'm gearing up for another EchoVerse. I'm still waiting to reach out and get my Shockwire Saints. You're not one to rest on your laurels, are you? Because now you've teamed up with Kyle from EchoVerse, and now you're going to release the Unravelers. So when does another project, when do you say, okay, I've got this group of songs, but I need a new project title? Like, this isn't going to be Shockwire Saints, or this isn't going to be Fall of Echoes. This is the Unravelers. And then tell us about the Unravelers, please.
So I don't plan these things. I literally just get thoughts into my head. I'm going to hope and not be too presumptuous that they are from above, because that's my bent, to want to please our Father with music. I consider myself a musician to the King. So, I mean, it's whatever he wants to do through me, with whoever, whatever I'm inspired to have the thoughts of different combinations of players that that I'm given kind of like, I hate to even say this, a vision for that is going to be the best group of guys for what's about to come through my noggin musically. And that's just kind of how I've always done it. The music that the Unravelers is going to do is not a good fit for EchoVerse. It's not a good fit for any other moniker. And I've worked with, if you're not hip to the MAP album, you can go to my Bandcamp page, and there's the MAP album, which stands for Malls, Amos, Perez, and also a dual, meaning of map, finding your way kind of a thing. Tim Amos is an amazing singer, more bluesier, soulful R&B rock kind of vibe guy. And the music hit me like that I was writing. I was like, this is a Tim song. These are songs for Tim. And that was kind of what was impressed upon me. And obviously working with Kyle in EchoVerse, I love his drumming. I reached out to him. I said, hey, I want to do something kind of cool, different, where, there's some extended jam sessions within a vocal song. I want to try to capture a drum kit sound that is more harkened back to like the early Stan Lynch, Tom Petty type sound. I said, are you cool with stripping your kit down to just, one or two and a floor tom and not need the Portnoy roll, kind of a thing. And he's like, heck yeah, man. He goes, I'm all about that. So, we worked together. He recorded some stuff. And I worked it up, sent it back to him. He's like, man, I think you nailed the Stan Lynch drum sound, kind of, but a little bit more powered up version. So that kind of inspired, the sound, the bass of the sound. And I'm like, I want nothing but a fretless bass on this music. All right. Old Blue Murder fan, Tony Franklin, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, the only guy I know is Jamie Millard for that. So I reached out to Jamie. I said, hey, this isn't Shockwire Saints stuff. This is something new. I'm going to bring in Kyle from EchoVerse doing stripped down drum kit, and Tim Amos vocally on some things. Are you cool with doing a project where you're doing nothing but fretless bass? And he's like, absolutely. So bam, within a month, 3 tunes. So I I love how God grabs things, puts it together, right combination of players, to do his will with it musically.
As the earth is growing from all the sin I've sown, quaking as the ground is breaking. I hear it everywhere. Heavy it weighs on us, crying from the mountains.
You brought up something. You mentioned Bandcamp, and so Shane and Rob, tell our viewers out there Bandcamps and your other resources for both of you guys. What's the best place to go for our viewers to discover your
For
work?
me, it's my Bandcamp page, because the website wasn't getting a lot of traffic. It was very expensive to maintain, and I'm like, everybody's going Bandcamp these days, so I just put all the albums on the Bandcamp for either someone can do individual song downloads or full album downloads or whatever. So everything I've ever done outside of EchoVerse has its own Bandcamp page, obviously, is on my Rob Perez Music Bandcamp.
Well, I think, I guess for us, we don't really have a website anymore. We don't really have much. We don't really have any physical product left, just about. So, you can hear our stuff, Spotify, you can iTunes, that kind of stuff. And that's pretty much, other than other streamers where you can find it. That's pretty much it for Orphan Project.
All the more reason for some more pressings of the other stuff.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
In a new album. So
We'll see.
Now, Rob, the Unravelers, that's releasing October the 22nd of 2026. Is that correct?
That's the goal. Yep.
Okay. Good deal. Good deal. Shane and Rob, well, before I get to this juncture, Keven, Rex, Jeff, other questions?
Nah, I'm good.
I do want to make a comment, Shane, on you put a bonus track on the Shockwire Saints album called In the Same Main. What I noticed about that, you can really hear a lot of cymbals on that song. I thought that was really cool. There's keyboards and cymbals seem to be pretty prevalent on that track. I didn't know if you had any thoughts that you could share about your idea for that or anything.
It's just the way that Mike Adams played it that I thought was really cool. I was like, this needs to be kind of a little bit more out front, you know.
Yeah.
I let the song kind of tell me what it wants, you know, what it needs, and you know, don't come at it with any type of ego or you know, or thinking it's got to be this or that. I just the song tells me how to produce it and how to mix it, you know, for it to say what it wants to say.
On the album artwork, as Kent mentioned, it's incredible. How did you come up with that whole idea? I'm just curious because I agree with Kent. Album artwork is really the first taste of, you know, your impression of the album. That is just beautiful, that whole artwork. What was your idea
I'll
for
take
that?
credit for the prompt that I put into AI.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm a good prompter.
Right.
I'm not a designer.
Okay.
Back in the day, the old, you know, everything through all the Visual Cliff albums and all that, I would, yeah, I'm pretty good with Photoshop and bringing in established digital art and kind of, you know, manipulating and doing whatever and creating, you know, the album covers that you see through that body of work. But anymore now, it's,
Right.
you know, I just had an idea for obviously shock wire, shock, you know, lightning bolt, you know, whatever, and then it just again, I'm a pretty good prompter, I guess, to come up with that because that even when it got generated back to me, I was like, ooh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Well, that begs the
I
question.
think we'll roll with that.
That begs the question for me, Rob, because I know that every song title, every project title, there's got to be a meaning behind it. And so I want to go back to the Unravelers. You had mentioned briefly about Shockwire Saints. Talk to me about the Unravelers. What constituted that name?
It's been a concept in my mind, and I don't want to pigeonhole Tim's writing because he's going to be the lyricist behind this. I'm no lyricist. The unraveling of time, the unraveling of the falseness that's out there. It could be the unraveling of somebody's life that gets them to a point where they're coming to the Lord now because they needed that unraveling. They needed that valley experience. So I mean, there's a bunch of different things that hits me with that band title that can then feed potentially Tim's lyrical direction or ideas.
Do you feel, Rob, that as I look around myself as a Christ follower and reading from the Lord's Word in my daily walk, I feel like I see more and more revelation unfurling.
Yeah,
before
it's
my
all
eyes.
unraveling, isn't it?
I feel like it is.
That was the precipice of that thought.
Yeah, time is unraveling because soon we will be in the realm where there is no time. Time is a man-made construct anyway. It's not a God thing. Anyway,
Yeah, again, so that album cover that I'm using for the Unravelers is again just me really laying out a good prompt about the concept of what I want to see visually, and that's what was generated. So I consider all that from God's divine hand. Of what that, some people look at AI as evil, and I'm like, well, hey, it's also creating images that are, putting the right spin on something for the Lord and what the kingdom to come. But yeah, you're right. We're seeing the unraveling of a lot of things, a lot of systems in society and in the world. And, it's not so hidden anymore. As much as, that grieves the soul for some folks. To me, I think we're living in one of the most exciting times of human history. As tough as it's going to get, buckle up the chin strap kind of thing. But, at the end of the day, we know it's coming.
Yep. We know the final score. We just have to
Yep.
hang on and persevere, because
Yep.
those who persevere will be given the crown of life.
Yep. Amen.
That's what the King said, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And, Rob, any tool that's placed before a person reveals the heart of that person. There is no good or evil tool, but any tool that's placed before a person, it will reveal the heart of that person. And that's how I feel about a guitar placed in your hand, Shane, a microphone placed in your hand, AI placed before any person, or whatever. It will reveal the heart of that person. So,
Great way to put it.
Turn away your fool from the soundness of the world they do, leaving soon or coming to a place where you and I live and breathe.
I just want to thank you guys for coming on. This has been a wonderful discussion and visit, and we love you guys, and we just pray for blessings for you guys in the future also.
Thank you.
For me, it's both of the music of Visual Cliff and the music of Orphan Project. Visual Cliff for me has been something a little more recent, even though I was familiar, but Orphan Project has been something that has been very close to my heart for over 10 years, 15 years. And if I had to have, remember Tower Records used to have their Desert Island discs.
Yes.
Well, I know I would probably have one Visual Cliff and one Orphan Project, which means I can only add one other Rush album onto that Desert Island disc. But just to say thank you to both of you, because I know the time, the work, and the effort that goes into creating music, and the time, effort, and work that goes into when you're in the studio, whether it's a full studio or a home studio, when you're trying to put it all together. It's a lot of work that goes into that.
Joy of
Well,
our
thanks,
soul.
brother. Yep.
Shane, you are a phenomenal vocalist. That's half the reason why I love Visual Cliff and latched onto it. When I first heard your voice, I'm like, you have your own unique voice, and I'm awed by it. And Rob, I can say the same thing for your production and guitar work and instrumentation, and kudos to all the other musicians too. But I just take note of certain things, and you guys are awesome. If each of you, Shane and Rob, could make a brief statement to leave a lasting impression with your friends and fans, what would you wish to tell them?
You want me to go?
Yeah, go first, brother.
Oh boy. Okay. Wow. So I would say, wherever you are, whatever you're going through, for sure, you will. And I guess I could repeat the line in Paupers Unfulfilled, where, there will come a time when you will hold the gift that can't be held, in a sense, by putting your hand out, and the King of Kings, coming in and giving you really the greatest gift and riches that you could have, which is knowing his son relationally, coming to him on the cross for the sins that that are keeping you where you're at, for the person that you are, and who you need to be, he died for you, and that's Christ. And now you'll know that, your identity is in the one who raised from the dead, and living in you is the Holy Spirit who did that. And so you're a son or daughter of the King now. And I just pray that anyone who's dealing with anything or wrestling with anything, they come to Christ. They open the Word, and the Word doesn't come back void. I know Orphan Project, our tagline way back in the beginning, we are all orphans until ... And we had it on the back of shirts, we had it on bumper stickers and all kinds of stuff. And it was just the whole idea of like everyone is a spiritual orphan until, Christ opens their eyes to who he is, and, you come running to the truth that you see. And so, that's what I would leave. Go to Christ, come to him. If you don't know him, get to know him. If you know him, continue to grow and love him through his word.
Rob?
I knew I should have went first. I can't top that. I would just echo on top of that. Ditto to everything, obviously, that Shane has just said, for sure. That's where the beginning of life is. I would just say this. Forget about who the players are. I'm not important. Neither of us are. We are just vehicles being used by God the Father to glorify him. So, as much as we obviously appreciate sitting and talking with you guys and, and hearing the kudos and all that, and we totally appreciate it, and we're humbled by it for sure. I'm sure I have no problem speaking for Shane on this too. But at the end of the day, once you throw that tune on, once you're playing that album, dropping the needle on anything we put out there, forget about us. It's not about us at all. It's about what you're hearing and what flew, poured through us into your ears and hearts, and just focus on that, concentrate on that, and let that music speak to that part of your heart and soul that it was intended to. And, what's beautiful about this, at this stage of, me and Shane's, earthly lives and how much we've worked together and everything that we've done together. And we're now talking about things that are 20 years old. You just sit back and you marvel as to how God orchestrated everything. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I'm humbled and just forever grateful to be a part of it in a very, very, very small way. As just a little point of light into the darkness.
Question for you quickly, Rob. What's your thoughts on this? If it's of God, because you were talking about yours and Shane Works being, 20 plus years old now. And to me, it's still fresh because it's like, I'm just discovering your all's great stuff, individually and collectively. If it's of God, does it ever really age?
Not in that concept. No, that's the beautiful thing about it. And that's what I also marvel at too, is again, just, sitting back and seeing, Sacred topping being the number one spot of the amount of downloads and streams every single month, for all these years. And that's still the song that comes in number one. So yeah, everything this, to quote a movie, what we do echoes into eternity. Because I love that movie. But it's true, it's always, it never ends. The message never ends. It will always be fresh to the ears that hear it first, and anew. And that's the beautiful part of it. Because it's out there. We're going to come and go, from this earth to the kingdom, into glory, but that's going to be left behind, for others to find and to be inspired towards hopefully the same things that we were when we wrote them.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank everybody for their time and for the fellowship today. And we always close out every episode with a brief portion of scripture as it relates to something the artist has done. It could be a song title, a song lyric, in this case, a project title. And the one question I didn't ask was Visual Cliff. What's the true meaning behind that name? Because it conjured up something to me. And if I'm wrong, I don't want to know just yet. But, I was pondering the name Visual Cliff. Visual Cliff, what does this mean? And I couldn't help, guys, but think of it as a warning in a certain way. It reminded me, the verse of scripture that I'm going to read from is Mark 8:35 and 36. And it says this. This is Yeshua, Jesus talking, and he says, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? And when I think of Visual Cliff, it's like I'm picturing so much of our lives are spent striving for material things of this world. And as we're reaching for these things which don't last, we don't see this cliff in front of us, because ultimately that's where all this tangible worldly stuff, it gets us nowhere. I don't know if I'm wrong in my assessment with the name, but to me, that's what it's kind of like a warning. And it just reminded me of that from Mark 8:35 and 36. So thank you for, placing that in my heart. And with that said, as we close, what does the name Visual Cliff mean?
So you're right. That was part of what I had in my head. What actually, the first time I ever heard the term Visual Cliff was my freshman year of college in psychology class. There's a test for human depth perception called Visual Cliff. And it's something that babies are used in this, test of depth perception. And I'll leave the viewers and you to kind of Google what a visual cliff looks like. But I thought at age 18, that's a really cool name for a band to test for your depth perception of not only the music, but the meanings behind it, and everything that you can kind of perceive from what somebody puts forth musically. So yeah, that eventually went into all the other things that you just said. And it just kept blooming and blooming and meaning to me. But that was the original thing. And that kind of said, I'm going to use that moniker, is from that first point of contact in my psychology class in my freshman year of college.
Very cool. Very cool. Shane and Rob, it's been an honor to meet you all. And thank you so much for letting us deep dive into your works today. Thank you, guys. So with that said, Keven,
thank you guys.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
I appreciate everybody, and we'll just wave goodbye to our viewers, but please stick around one more moment. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Friends, without further ado, regarding our very special guest, they've released a variety of rock and metal albums collectively and with other artists. Their bands and projects reflect songcraft of the highest caliber and skill meted out with precision. Visual Cliff, Fall of Echoes, Orphan Project, EchoVerse, Shockwire Saints. These are just a few I can't read my writing, y'all. And I'm getting a sty in this eye, I think. So let me do that intro over right there.
Did you have a question, Rex?
No, I'm sorry. No, I did not. No.
Your face just popped up there in the front
Oh,
for a second.
okay. Oh my.
So
Didn't mean to scare you.
Guys, I'm gonna edit this part out. Rex, we're gonna have to adjust your microphone, man. You were mega hot.
Really?
Loud.
Yeah, you got
I'm-
really hot.
I'm loud now.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, let me just
Quit
see.
screaming at us. Quit screaming at us, Rick.
How about that? Is that better?
Oh, that's way
That's-
too little.
That's perfect.
Is it
Go up a
better?
little bit.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I got a coughing spell there,
Okay.
and man, thought I was gonna die.
That's okay.
All right, Rex. A little more.
How many bars, Rex?
Oh, you don't want me to sing. That's for Shane.